Live from our nation's capital, it's Deadline DC with Brad Bannon.
Welcome to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. It's really cold outside, but here on Deadline DC, every week we try to fix anyway, the problems caused by Donald Trump and the right wing extremists who call him daddy. I'm Brad Bannon, the host of Deadline DC. I'm a national Democratic and progressive strategist, a analyst on American politics for the network Times of India International Television Network, and a columnist for The Hill in Washington, D.C. To get my take on Donald Trump's imperial presidency, you can read my columns in The Hill at muckrack.com/Brad Bannon. Mondays on Deadline DC, I talk to the people and players behind the politics and policies that drive our great nation forward, or at least keep it from going backwards during Trump 2.0. Today, we've got a great show for you with great guests. In the first half hour, in the hour, we're going to talk about the hot button issues that will define the midterm elections next year. In the first half hour, our guest is activist and attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who's going to talk about the big immigration issues. And then in the second half hour, our guest will be Natasha Murphy, who is healthcare director policy at the Center for American Progress. Before we bring on our first guest, we're going to play this clip, which is really pretty horrible. Don't let your kids listen to it. It's Donald Trump talking about Somalian refugees.
I hear they ripped off Somalians, ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain, and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it.
That, of course, was Donald Trump off on one of his anti-immigrant rants. Our guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an attorney and immigration activist. Welcome back to Deadline DC, Kate. I'm glad you could make it today.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Let me ask you, since you're an attorney, is there a textbook legal definition of racism? And does Trump's rant fit that definition?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that there is absolutely racism at play in Trump's policies, and you don't have to look any further than his refugee policy, where he canceled refugee processing globally, except for white South Africans. and created a welcome wagon for them. And I mean, that's one example of course, many examples. And I think it's really rich coming from a guy like Trump when he's talking about somebody ripping off the state of Minnesota to the tune of billions. When you look at Trump's kleptocracy and his policies of personal enrichment to the cost of the voters and the American public, and when you dive in and you look at the people who invest and buy into Trump's properties globally and his Bitcoin schemes and give him $400 million airplanes, and the fact that this man has literally personally enriched himself to the tune of billions of dollars, trading favors for America, horse trading on our backs. And then he turns around and accuses hardworking refugees in the state of Minnesota of doing the very thing that he and his family members do. And I'm not saying that there aren't a couple of, or a few, who knows how many bad Somali actors in Minnesota. I think there were fraud schemes. But I've been doing immigration law for 20 years. I've represented many clients from Somalia. I've done a lot of asylum cases from Somalia. I've studied the country and I know its people. And I know that the people who make it out of a situation like that and they come to this country as refugees, they are so grateful. They love this country. They work so hard. In many ways, they're more American than most people who are born here. And it's an absolute garbage statement from a garbage president to claim that people from a nation, everybody from an entire nation, is a garbage person. I mean, it's nauseating. It's nauseating, and it is so ironic that the most corrupt thief that we have ever had in the White House is accusing refugees of the very thing that he himself does. It's intolerable, really.
What's it like for the immigrants you work with as we approach the holiday season? I even read somewhere that immigrants are afraid to go to church for Christmas services because they're afraid ICE might be staking out the premises. What kind of fear exists among immigrants?
Oh, their lives are completely upended. Just last night, I was talking to someone I know who was going over to her aunt's house because her aunt and their entire family were self-deporting. They just can't take it anymore. And so their family was having a goodbye dinner, the whole big extended family. And I have clients daily who report to me that they don't seek medical care, they don't go to church. Some kids don't go to school. These communities are living in fear and hiding, and they're not overreacting. These are reasonable responses to what is an outright attack on a community, and it's horrific. It's horrific, and it is, from a humanitarian perspective, for those of us who care about these families, this community, and the stories and the children who are suffering. It's painful. And I also spend a lot of time talking to people, probably not a lot of your listeners, but people who, consider themselves moderate or even conservative, and aren't as moved by the humanitarian aspect. But all those folks really ought to start paying attention from an economic perspective, because this is also damaging our entire country and our ability to have a labor force and to innovate, and have a strong nation. And all of that is being dismantled by Stephen Miller and Donald Trump right before our very eyes.
Kate, what kind of legal advice as an attorney do you give to immigrants who are facing deportation, or family immigrants who have family members facing deportation?
So, really strong piece of advice, and non-negotiable, is every undocumented person needs to consult with an immigration lawyer to find out whether you can get legal status and what you can do about it. You need to have a safety plan where you have collected all your important documents, And especially if you have kids here, you need to have a plan for the kids about who is authorized to pick them up, that that person has the proper documentation, they're always going to have their phone on them, and that you have done the groundwork as a parent to make sure that those kids aren't going to go into state custody if you get picked up, because I've seen that
Kate,
happen.
I'm going to have to interrupt you because we have to take a quick break to give our radio listeners a vacation, but we will be continuing this interview with our online TV viewers. We'll be right back right after this quick break. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is immigration activist and attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. I want to ask you this, Kate. This U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case challenging birthright citizenship. Could you explain to our viewers what birthright citizenship is and why the Trump administration is challenging its constitutionality?
Sure. The birthright citizenship is part of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which states that any person born on U.S. soil and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a U.S. citizen. And this, for centuries, has meant precisely that. People born in the United States are automatically U.S. citizens. The Supreme Court was asked to review and define this in the late 1800s in a case called Wong Kim Ark. The Supreme Court held the very same thing. Anyone born in the United States is a United States citizen, and it has been established constitutional law ever since. And on the first day of Trump's second administration, he attempted to revoke birthright citizenship through executive order, where he just signed a memo saying that moving forward, anyone who's born in the United States to an undocumented parent will no longer be granted U.S. citizenship. There were immediate lawsuits. Federal courts immediately blocked, issued nationwide injunctions against the policy because it is so clearly unconstitutional and illegal. The DOJ appealed those cases up to the Supreme Court earlier this year, which did not rule on the question of the legality of birthright citizenship, but what they ruled on was whether lower federal courts can issue nationwide injunctions. And the Supreme Court held that they cannot do that and instead would need to certify a class. So that was the early holding of the Supreme Court. And I think most constitutional scholars in the legal community thought that that was really kind of the end of that, because it's so crystal clear that birthright citizenship is in the Constitution. But in what was kind of a surprise this week, the Supreme Court, in setting their calendar and granting cert for next year, decided to grant cert to the case on birthright citizenship itself, in which the court will actually decide on the legality of the executive order revoking birthright citizenship. And I think that of course, it means that it's up in the air and it is a question. On the other hand, I'm trying not to panic because I believe that, based on the oral arguments of the nationwide injunction case, it does appear that even the conservative justices on the court seem pretty clear that the president can't revoke birthright citizenship through executive order, but we won't know really how the court's going to decide until the middle of next year.
Let me ask you a quick, and unfortunately, just have a few seconds before we got to take another quick break. What is the Trump's, the Constitution is pretty clear about birthright citizenship. So what's the basis of the Trump challenge?
So I think that their argument is going to be about those words subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I think they're going to argue that undocumented children, children of undocumented parents are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, in which case the counter argument is, well, then why are you detaining them and deporting them?
Sorry, I have to interrupt you again, Kate. We're going to take a quick break to bring back our radio listeners. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm Brad Bannon, of course. Somebody has to do it. And our guest in this half hour is immigration activist and attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. Kate, I wanted to ask you another question about immigration before we talk about Texas politics. Are there American citizens who were being deported by ICE?
There have been a couple of mistaken deportations of U.S. citizens. That's not happening on a large scale. What is happening on way too large of a scale are detentions, temporary detentions of U.S. citizens. So ProPublica came out with an investigation about 2 months ago where since January they were able to uncover over 170 instances of U.S. citizens who had been detained by immigration authorities, and most of them had reported detention for hours or days, beating, very difficult circumstances, inability to contact lawyers, etc. And the majority of them were held on suspicion of not having legal status, and every single one of those people was Latino. So very clear racial profiling being demonstrated in ICE and CBP enforcement actions, even against U.S. citizens.
Okay. Let's turn to Texas politics. First of all, before I do that, I want to welcome back our radio listeners. If you want to watch us as well as listen to us, there are all sorts of ways you can watch Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. You can watch us at youtube.com/@DeadlineDC, on Twitter at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, and at facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon/videos. Kate, you are running for the state legislature. Can you tell our viewers and listeners why you're running?
I don't know, temporary insanity, Brad.
Oh, okay, that's a very good explanation.
I'm from Austin, Texas, born and raised. I've been an immigration lawyer here for 20 years. I live in Northeast Austin, which is currently represented by James Tallarico, who is running for U.S. Senate, and his seat is being vacated. And I've been very active politically, especially within immigration issues. I've testified at the Capitol and watched the way things happen. And I've been very, very frustrated as a Texan with the way that the legislature and the governor and the lieutenant governor and the attorney general spend our money and treat regular Texans. And when I realized that Tallarico's seat was opening up, I thought, well, if there were ever a time to throw my hat in the ring, it's now. And so I'm a first-time candidate for public office, and I'm learning and growing and stretching every day.
Well, good luck. Good luck on your race.
Thank
Let
you.
me ask you a more general question about Texas politics. Texas has been red at the statewide level, it seems forever. Every once in a while, someone runs for the Senate or for governor, and people in Washington get excited. This might be finally the time that Democrats break through. Let me ask you, first of all, why has Texas been red so long?
I think that's a very good question and worthy of actual research and exploration. But my quick answer to that is that there's a lot of rural area in Texas. There's a lot of ranchers and business owners, and a general, the don't tread on me. There's a sense of a desire for limited government and regulation. At the same time, there's a strong evangelical Christian base within the state. And finally, I think a big part of it is gerrymandering, the way that the districts are drawn, and interference of billionaires and conservative Christian nationalist types who just infuse millions and millions of dollars into candidacies and campaigns and movements in a way that it's really, really difficult for the Democratic Party to stand up against. Not impossible, but I think that there's, of course, as with anything complicated, there's a lot of factors at play, but I think those are the baseline issues that have led to sort of this Republican stronghold in the state for so many decades now.
Okay, well, let me ask, the next question is that redness going to turn purple or even blue anytime soon? There's always, again, talk in Washington, well, got growing Latino population, and sooner or later it's going to tip Democrat. What are your expectations? Are we, you've got very good Democratic candidates running for the Senate and governor. Is this the year it finally turns around and you have for instance, a Democratic governor to work with after you're elected to the legislature?
I mean, it would be so exciting. We do have some really exciting candidates. I mean, James Tallarico himself running for Senate is really exciting. But of course, flipping a state is not about one candidate. It's about a movement. It's about the Democratic Party. We have a great new party chair at the Democratic Party, and they're doing a lot of get out the vote. One of the things that they realize is that 1 in 3 households in our state speak Spanish at home, and the party really needs to communicate in the language of the voters. And so these are some changes that the Democratic Party can make. But as I mentioned before, it's a really hard thing to fight against billionaires and unscrupulous Republicans who will do things like mid-decade redistrict and gerrymander in ways that steal seats in elections. And so it's very dirty. I mean, Republican politics in Texas and many other places, but it very, very dirty. And so, I mean, on the plus side, Democrats have to learn how to get real scrappy and are, getting creative, and that's pushing out some really
You
interesting and new
sound like you're
candidates.
pretty scrappy as a Democrat.
I'm pretty scrappy.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. Maybe this is the year, and wouldn't that be great? And it'll be up to the voters to decide.
One quick question. What impact will congressional redistricting have in Texas? Republicans are hoping to pick up 4 or 5 seats and flip them from red to blue, which, is a real problem for Democrats nationally. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's been, a recent blow because they redistricted in Texas, and we had, a bunch of Democrats go to Chicago and break quorum, and then the new maps passed anyway, and then there was a lawsuit out in El Paso, and a 3-judge panel blocked the new maps, including a Trump appointee. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court, in a really disappointing decision, decided to reverse that decision and allow
Kate,
the
I'm going to have to sadly interrupt you because we're out of time, but I hope you can come back to Deadline DC. I enjoy talking to you. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC and our guest, Natasha Murphy from the Center for American Progress, to discuss healthcare right after this very quick break.